Let's jump over, and I'm going to go ahead and click the plus in the lower left corner to create a new sheet. And I'm going to create another sheet with dates. There we go. Now you've done a little bit of work with dates before, so let's just kind of recap or review some things we've checked out. Obviously, we can enter in a current date. That's no problem. I think there's a keyboard shortcut. Is it? Yeah, Control semicolon will insert the current date. So I'm recording this on February 26, 2024. So that's a quick way to put in the current date. And it enters it in just as text. So whatever the date is, that's what it is. And if I were to open up my spreadsheet tomorrow, it would still say February 26 because it's just been entered in as a number. Now, we can write equals the today function, press your tab key and a closing parentheses. The today function doesn't have any parameters in the parentheses. So if I do the today function, I also get February 26, 2024. However, if I were to save this worksheet and open it up tomorrow, the date using the today function would show February 27th. It would update every time I open up that sheet. So if you ever want to have a date on your worksheet that is always showing the current date, then you would use the today function as opposed to just typing in the date by hand. Now there's also the now function. The now function also has empty parameters, or an empty set of parentheses, no parameters. The now function gives us the date and the time, but this is just a number. And if we could see the numbers that we've entered in here, I'm going to select all three of these cells, I'll change them over to comma style. We can see that since it's all the same date, February 26, 2024, we can see that the date number entered in is 45,348. The today function produces that 45,348, and the now function produces 45,348.49. So the now function includes the time. Dates in Excel are expressed as a numeric value starting with January 1st, 1900. January 1st, 1900 is number 1. And then every day after January 1st, 1900 gets a different numeric value. That allows us to very easily subtract and add one date to another date. The now function includes time. Time in Excel is expressed as a number less than 1, so a number to the right of the decimal. And so if you combine the date number to the left of the decimal with the time number to the right of the decimal, you can get both pieces of information. I'll just do a Control Z to format those back. So I don't use the now function very often, but the today function I do find very, very useful. And of course, there's other functions related to date and time that you'll read about and experiment with. But for the most part, they're rather easy. So for instance, there is a function that we can use off to the side, equals weekday. Returns a number from 1 to 7 identifying the day of the week. So I could say, well, what is the weekday of this particular date? And then I can just close that off, press enter, and it says, well, that's a number 2. All right, well, what does a number 2 mean? Well, in this case, number 2 is, what is today? Today's Monday. So Sunday is 1, Monday is 2. Gee, that's kind of tough to keep track of. Well, we can test it out pretty easily. So I know that 2/26, today is Monday. So if I were to type in the date 2/25/2024, which was yesterday, that was a number 1. That's Sunday. It's a little bit weird to look at it this way, but that's okay. You may not even need this piece of information, but what you could do is you could say, you know what, okay, well, there's the number 1. I know that means a Sunday. And using this technique, you could, let's say, highlight all of the Sundays or all of the Mondays in a particular calendar. So let's try this out as a quick example. I'm going to go ahead and plug in a bunch of dates over here. Let's start with 2/25/24, and that gives me a date. And then beneath this, I'll just take the date that I started with, and I'm going to add 1 to it. So, all right, there we go. And then I can take this formula and I can drag it all the way down, and I'm going to get a bunch of other dates going forward. Seems pretty easy. Now, what I would like to do next is I would like to highlight all of the cells, or format all of the cells that represent a Monday. And of course, we know that Monday is value 2. All right, so I want to highlight all of the Mondays because maybe that's a special day for us or something. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to select all of the cells that contain these dates. And then I'm going to head over to conditional formatting, and I'm going to create a new rule. But this time, instead of using one of the very easy to use format only cells that contain, format only top and bottom, I'm going to use a formula to determine which cells I want to format. So I want to format where the cells, let's see, where the weekday parentheses of D1 closing parentheses is equal to a 2. It's very weird to write something like this because you're thinking, wait a minute, weekday of D1 equals 2. Well, D1 is right there with the February 25th. I happen to know that that value is a 1 because that was a Sunday. But don't you need to check for all of these? That's okay, it will. By putting D1 in as a relative reference, it's going to work with all of these other cells that I've selected. Now, I could have written it this way. I could have done $D1 because the $sign is an absolute reference. That puts an absolute reference on the column D. And that would still produce a correct response. But I don't want to put a $sign in front of row number 1. I don't want that to be absolute. I want it to apply down to the different cells. Okay, now, and for formatting, I'll go super simple here. I'll just click on the Format button. I'll go to Fill, and I'll give it a yellow background. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK again. And now, as I look at my dates in this list, all of the Mondays have been formatted with a yellow background. So that way we can kind of base this information. Now, I use something like this in my real life. I use a spreadsheet as kind of like a fitness weight tracker. I'm trying to lose some weight, so I've got a spreadsheet for that. I've also got a spreadsheet for personal finances and keeping track of account balances and things. And sometimes I like to highlight rows based on the current date. Okay, well, we can do the same thing. So let's pretend I've got some other data in these other cells. I'm just going to go ahead and select all of this stuff, knowing that the first column that is included in my selection is where my dates are. And very, very similar, I can do something like this. I can go to conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula. Now this time, I'm going to go down here. I only want to highlight a row if the date corresponds to the current date. Okay, which means, since today is February 26th, only this February 26th row should be highlighted. So what I'm going to do next is I want to format all of the cells where the date of today is equal to, let's see, today is equal to the date in parentheses of, I'll do $D1 again. Now, even though I know that February 26 is in the second row, which is D2, I'm still using D1 because that is the top left corner of my range, and that is the first cell that has dates in it that I want to look at to see if it's right or not. So if today's date is equal to the date in the D column, basically, then I want to do some formatting. And I'll just head over to Format, and I will change the fill to orange. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK again. Oh, I've entered too few arguments, so I must have missed a parentheses somewhere. So let's make sure I've got everything that I need. And yes, I can see what I did wrong. I did the date function there, so that's not what I need. I actually just need D1. I don't need date because D1 contains a date, so that was actually wrong. So this looks a little bit better. If the date for today equals the value that's in these cells, then I should be in good shape. My formatting still applies. I'm good there. I'm going to click OK, and now we can see February 26, 2024 gets highlighted because that is today's date. And if I save this worksheet and open it up tomorrow, then I'm going to see that February 27th row is highlighted. So that is the gist of working with dates, particularly the today function, but also using conditional formatting to highlight some rows based on some conditions. Thanks for hanging out with me, and let's get into some other stuff in another video.